This is my intro. There are many others like it, but this one is mine.
Hi, I wanted to start this video off by saying free Palestine, trans people can use whatever bathrooms they want, hands off Iran, and hands off Venezuela. I just want to make sure that this channel doesn't grow at all and that I stay true to my virtues. So, anyways, it's Dan. Great to see you again. It's been about 1,000 years since I've uploaded, but thank you for staying with me. Today I want to ask, what is the agrarian question? Now that goes back to an essay by Mr. Joseph Stalin, or as he liked to be called, Uncle Joe. The agrarian question is how to divide agricultural land up after a revolution. In the case of the USSR, China, or Vietnam, or Laos, they had to deal with a feudal or semi-feudal system. Now, as a little reminder, feudalism is when you are tied to the land. You legally are tied to the land, and you legally cannot quit the landlord who lords over you. Michael Parenti wrote some great stuff about Tibet as an example of feudalism, where the religious lamas would rule over massive estates and live high on the hog while people suffered, and you could basically gouge people's eyes out, torture them, and flay them if you were part of the upper class. I wanted to bring this up because I live in Canada. We don't have any kind of feudal economy here, not anymore. There used to be, as far as I'm aware, some kind of feudal or semi-feudal elements in Quebec, but those have largely been privatized out, especially after the silent revolution under Maurice Duplessis. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. And if anyone wants to correct me, please do so in the comments. But in the case of Canada, I live in a capitalist society where land is privately owned. So that means that, in theory, every farmer is a capitalist. And, to paraphrase Lenin, one capitalist will kill many capitalists. Traditionally in Canada, it was family farms. And as these things go, just like Walmart killed the mom and pop business, agribusiness in Canada killed the mom and pop farm. I'm going to link some statistics in the comments below, but ultimately in Canada, we don't grow food to feed people. We grow food for money. That's how that works. And same with the United States. They also have a purely capitalist business model. There might be some publicly held land. There's some publicly held land here in Canada, but overwhelmingly farmland is private land. That means it's owned by a private individual for profit's sake. And many people will actually rent out farmland rather than farm it themselves, so they can squeeze the farmers as much as they want. And also, let's be honest, abuse the migrant workers who do the bulk of the labor. Because if you want to really thank someone for your food, you want to thank a Spanish-speaking migrant usually. It's like, thank you, Jesus, and he'll say, de nada. Alright, if that's too much, let me know. But I did want to talk about alternatives to this. In the case of the USSR, since they started off with a feudal model, they began with, let's say, soft privatization, where land was distributed up by the peasants according to the peasants and their needs. And then eventually the land after that was collectivized. So as they found, once they had split up the land into farmers' lots, that was not a bad way to create food, but it's very inefficient. It's much easier to have 50 guys working on each individual parcel of land over and over again than one person working on an individual family lot. Now, I know that the idea of collectivization might be scary for some people. I believe that collectivization is the way to go for agriculture. It's already, paraphrasing Engels here, capitalism has already done away with private property for 99% of people, so in Canada, collectivizing agriculture should be relatively easy given the fact that there's very few people involved actually owning the land, and those who do, we can work it out with. And also in the case of Canada, we have a large First Nations population, so we would be giving land to them under decolonization strategies. But yeah, read the links in the description, go over it. It's a little bit of a shorter one today, but it's worth looking over. And before I leave you here, it's worth remembering that we're all told that collectivization was a disaster in the Soviet Union. But as Grover Furr points out in his book Blood Lies, The Evidence, collectivization was the only way to break the cycle of famine. What they don't tell you in school in capitalist countries like Canada and the USA is that famine had been endemic to places like Russia, China, and Vietnam. Even though the land was rich, there were famines sometimes every 2 to 3 years, at most every 8 years, and this had gone on for basically as long as anyone had been writing it. People will talk about the famine of 1933-35, but that was the last famine in Russian history. That was the last famine in Ukrainian history. Unless you want to count Boris Yeltsin basically destroying the USSR and causing a crisis of living. But maybe that doesn't meet the criteria of a famine. So anyways, thank you for stopping with me in this short video. Please leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. I love respectful discussion. And have a fantastic day.
This is my outro. There are many others like it, but this one is mine.